Oh God.
Uh,
This
We're streaming live on YouTube, so no swearing.
No swearing.
okay.
You can't tell what you really feel about Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
My son-in-law would never speak to me again.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, he's a big Steve Jobs fan.
Oh, okay.
Well, we saw you earlier, but I mean, we hear you. That's good.
I see. Well, I saw you for a second and now it's that blank again. Your video is stopped.
Yeah, if you tap the screen, there should be a little camera, like a video camera with a red line through it somewhere that you can hit that should turn your video back on.
Okay, I see. Oh God. Speak.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You hit something, though, to turn it off for a second.
No, I'm trying. It's that video stopped again.
Yeah,
But
let me try it.
and
Send you a
the
note.
host has asked you to start your video. Okay.
Try that. There we go.
There you are. We got you again.
Okay. Well, I don't have you, but that's okay.
We can hear each other.
That's all that matters. Talk to me.
And we can see you on television.
Okay.
We'll send you the link.
Let's talk before it's the hour is up.
Exactly. Get on with it, right?
Yes.
Oh, all right, Sean, you gonna do the intro?
Yeah, and Patricia, I appreciate you making time. We usually do a nice soft introduction where I'll go back afterwards and say wonderful things about you. Not that we're going to do that anyway, but
Yeah,
we'll do
please don't. They wouldn't believe you anyway, so it doesn't matter.
A little more formal introduction afterwards. But in the beginning, I want to. I'm going to ask you one question, then I'm going to hand the rest of it to Bobby because you guys know each other well, and I want to let you guys talk. I know you want to talk about Murphy's testimony, but I want to start it with saying you are Patricia Jensen, and I have not been able to find a job description or a job title for you. So what I am calling you is a global tennis influencer. So I want to know if that works for you. Tell me about who you are.
The tennis world used to refer to me as a marketing architect.
Oh, I like it.
With building brands for players and events kind of thing.
That's a fancy title.
I know. I've never heard of anybody else having it, so I'll keep it.
Very good. Oh, I'm seeing what we got. Okay, we're going. So you'll come back, Sean, and do it.
Yeah, if we need something specifically done, what did you say? Tennis architect, marketing architect?
Global. I like global tennis architect. Though. I think we need to add on it.
Global marketing architect.
Global marketing architect and tennis influencer, Patricia Jensen.
Whoa. Thank you so much for that compliment.
That sounds
you have to go back on LinkedIn.
But yeah, give us a quick bit about who you are. And I know Bobby's got a bunch of questions for you. So tell me who Patricia Jensen is really quickly.
Well, it depends upon when in the tennis world that you knew me. There was a point where I was Pat Jensen when I was representing my sons and my daughters. And because our family still to this day is the only family with 4 siblings on their respective tours at the same time. And and each of my daughters played each of the Grand Slams with each of their brothers, which is, I'm sure that too is either a notable record or something interesting. I raised my family in a small town, 10,000 residents, Ludington, Michigan, and every weekend we were either in Chicago or Detroit because there was no certainly we were lucky to have 2 tennis courts in the whole town, let alone an indoor facility. And the prenup was all 11 boys were going to play football at Notre Dame. But then the boys were very successful and heavily involved in the Ford Motor Company punt pass and kick program. So the plan was working. And until I met a doctor who summered in Ludington, whose son was not only an All-American quarterback at Notre Dame, but he was also an All-American tennis player. So the doctor said, keep their growth plates healthy and safe. Don't let them get involved with any contact in football. Wait until they're juniors or seniors in high school to put them on the field. Well, by that time, of course, Luke and Murphy were already nationally ranked in tennis, and there was no more football for the Jensens. So, and whatever the boys did, certainly the girls had to do because they were in the car every weekend.
So, Patricia, tell me that you've told me the story about Luke, that he was going to a football camp, but he got an entry into a tournament. He started the tournament in not tennis clothes, and he borrowed rackets. And that's it. I love that story. So give us that one.
Well, of course, he was at a quarterback camp at Notre Dame, and he had, before that camp, he had played the Western Sectional Tournament to qualify for a national event. And of course, I shouldn't say of course, he'll probably never talk to me again, and he didn't qualify for a national event. So of course, I wasn't disappointed at all. We had him in the car on the way to South Bend for the quarterback camp because he was a left-handed quarterback. And by the time he was in the 8th grade, and because of punt, pass, and kick being on television every Thanksgiving Day at the Lions Pontiac Stadium, again, the Lions a game against the Chicago Bears, this left-handed quarterback from the time he was 8 to 13 was on the field at halftime for the punt, pass, and kick competition at that level. So Luke is at quarterback camp, and all of a sudden we got a phone call saying that there was one person had dropped out of, for whatever reason, of the Western section, and Luke was next in line. So I said, oh, isn't that nice? So not knowing anything about tennis. So we put him on a Greyhound bus to Shreveport, Louisiana, and of course got him housing. And he lost first round main, first round backdraw, and first round doubles. A nice triple crown introduction to national competition. And so he was so bothered by losing that he called and said, Mom, I really love football, but I don't want 10 other men to determine my destiny. I want to be number one in the world in tennis. And I said, you better talk to your father because I don't know what you're talking about here. Because, of course, I had my goals for him. And so his father wanted to know if he was drinking. And he said, no, I just want to be number one in the world in tennis. And I think the great story, if you have determination and you set your goals, here's a player at 14 who wasn't even nationally ranked, but by the time he was 18, he was number one in the world in both singles and doubles with Patrick McEnroe. So if you set the right path and if you have a good work ethic, your goals can be achieved.
Well, obviously the stories are intertwined, right? By being mom and kids, but you've played such a great role in this, and you are such a tennis ambassador. So we were thinking today we would focus on you. So tell us, what did you start off doing? What were you known for in Michigan area?
Oh my goodness. Well, if I may say, Ludington, Michigan was a Class B school. And when Title IX kicked in or was effective, they didn't have anybody to coach women's gymnastics, and nobody in Ludington, Michigan knew anything about gymnastics. So it was at the time that the twins were born, the athletic director came to me and said I didn't have a choice. He needed me to be coaching gymnastics. So we started learning. But after a point, a Class B only school competing in all of the classes throughout the state. We won Ludington won 7 straight championships. And we had a banner on the wall that said "Somos numero uno." So my girls knew that they would be number one if they made certain that they followed the rules and they learned a good work ethic. And they were. So I'm in like 3 Hall of Fames right now. One of course in the state of Michigan, another one, the National High School Coaches Association, and then Pam Shriver's International Special Olympics Hall of Fame.
Fantastic. So tell us the summer where you drove 90,000 miles.
Oh my God. Well, you know all my stories, Bobby.
Well, we might have had lunch once or twice together. I don't know.
Well, at that summer, all 4 of my children were nationally ranked juniors. And the Sports Illustrated cover article that year was, if you want your child to play a national junior tennis competition, it's the average expense is about $100,000. Well, their father made 30,000 as a teacher, and I made 30,000 as a teacher, and I had 4 children, and they all wanted to eat. So, you had to become very creative, and you had to be prepared to drive. So one summer, getting all 4 of them to where they needed to be in order to compete in the 3, there was a hard court national. Most of those were in California. Then there was a clay court national, and then of course the nationals. And so in order for my children who had qualified to compete in those 3 national tournaments, you had to drive to get them there.
There you go. Okay, so I know. Again, I'm trying to get you to Atlanta. So I know Rebecca went to Kansas. Murphy started at USC, transferred to Georgia. Luke was all USC?
Yes, all USC.
And Rachel is even though I think I speak to her children the most, Rachel's the one that I know the least. So where did Rachel go to school?
Oh, Rachel and Rebecca, we moved to Atlanta because of the airport primarily. Because it was always 6 hours to the starting line, for any and all of the international flights. So after Murphy went on to Southern Cal, I was at the US Open. And of course, people like to know what you're doing and what's next, what's the next chapter. And I said, I had planned on moving to Detroit for my daughter's training. And, everyone laughed at me and said, it's just a Band-Aid stop, because you're eventually going to end up in Atlanta. And I said, why Atlanta? What's going on in Atlanta? Well, it's the tennis capital of the world, and it's the only place where you can flourish and survive. So if we start looking into the airport, meaning so many direct flights, everywhere in the world, so that made sense to move to Atlanta. So before the US Open was over, I had several meetings with the CEO of Southern Tennis Association at the time, and he offered me a couple of junior development positions there in his office. So I said, well, that makes sense. So we moved to, I called the girls. I told them, you don't need coats because we're moving to Atlanta. Take your coats out of your luggage, and I'll call Detroit and tell them we're not coming, and just be ready to move to Atlanta. So we moved to Atlanta, and my first meeting at Southern was, welcome to Southern, introduced me to all these people, etc. But the plan was that I was to go back the next day to discuss the 2 positions that he had available that he had offered me. So the next morning I called Southern and I said, what time is our meeting today? And the woman who answered said, there's no meeting. I said, no, this is Patricia. This is Pat Jensen at the time. This is Pat Jensen. And I just spoke. I was with you all yesterday and there's a meeting today. She said, I told you there's no meeting. And I said, well, I just don't understand. Well, whatever the gentleman's name was, he died last night of a heart attack. So he's not going to be there for your meeting. So I'm saying, oh my God. So I picked the girls up from school and told them about the new challenge that we were faced. And I'll never forget, Rachel said, we've never turned back and we've never quit on anything that we set out to do. So we're going to stay and we'll make it happen. And so we did. And we love Atlanta.
When did you guys get here?
95, we bought the house. It would have to be like maybe 1990, 91, maybe.
Because by 95, they were getting close to playing for the Thunder. No, I don't.
95, well, 93, the boys won the French.
Right.
We were already living in Atlanta. The girls did Rebecca play for the Thunder or?
Yeah, she played for the Thunder.
Oh, okay. Of course, Billie Jean was a big supporter of ours and a phenomenal mentor. And so obviously it was the right thing to do to always support a World Team Tennis, which was, her brainchild.
And that is something, Sean. It's fun. I was there at the finals. I think the year Connors played, and they did the finals indoors at I guess it was Racket Club at the South still at that point. And
yeah,
here's Billie Jean King. She's the organizer of it, and she's out there giving lessons. She couldn't help herself. She just had to have a racket in her hand. And then, of course, she's sitting off with Alana up in the bleachers, and I just had to wander right over next to them. And I mean, she just broke down the match constantly. It was so cool that I was like, she is just unbelievable. Everything with her with tennis is just, it's wild. She just breaks it down just constantly. It was like, well, that was kind of very cool. But yeah, so we were big team tennis. And I think I don't know if we met there first or we met, and I don't know if you remember this because you wouldn't remember me because I was in costume. I was carrying Blaze's bags, and Blaze was the Paralympic mascot. And you guys had just signed the deal with the Cartoon Network, and Blaze got on the court with Murphy. And we were hitting the ball around, obviously in support of the Paralympics at the Atlanta Athletic Club. And, people were surprised that Blaze could hit the tennis ball. I was like, well, little did they know. But I think that was the first time that I had direct contact. And then, of course, I was the sideline announcer. We spoke to Billy Pate yesterday, and he passes on his regards. Billy was a very good friend of mine. My brother was an intern for the Thunder. So that's when our lives really started to cross much on a more frequent basis. And we just became friends, have done a lot of business together. And Sean, she's my go-to call whenever something tennis related comes up because she's got the Rolodex of kings. So you always call Patricia. And Patricia's famous line of stepping into my office or my other favorite, buy or die. And kind of persuasive. And you were not Pat back then. You were PMJ.
Oh, well, that could have been too. And what's so interesting today is it depends upon what year or what era you knew me as to what my name was and whether or not because most recently I made a couple of phone calls to what I thought was a dear friend or certainly a colleague that knew me. And I kept saying, Patricia Jensen is calling, Patricia Jensen is calling. So finally, I couldn't believe he wasn't returning my call. So I called him. I said, for God's sakes, if Pat Jensen called you, would you return the call? He said, oh my God, yeah, where is she? I mean, did she call me? So yes, she did. So I think it just depends upon I guess you have to go through several names or titles before they, or that's how they recommend or remember you, rather. Excuse me.
I know we're jumping all over the place, but as Sean mentioned at the beginning, and I know you sent me the link and I haven't had time to watch it. Yesterday, Murphy, I guess it was yesterday, he testified before Congress.
Oh no! If I mean, talking about amazing. There is the senator, a female senator from Florida, has offered to both sides of the aisle a bill that AEDs are to be required on all sports fields. Now, the thing that I said to Murphy, how about sports fields are fine. Let's get them. Let's get the defibrillators out there. But how about tennis clubs? And of course, it's Murphy's tennis objective, our defibrillator objective for tennis is to have a defibrillator on every court. And so there were several congressional senators who spoke yesterday. Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills was there. Senator Schumer was in a Buffalo Bills shirt, which was what made it kind of cool. And then Damar spoke, Murphy spoke, and then a gentleman who lost his son on the soccer field because they had defibrillators, but nobody knew how to work them. And so, it was a lot, relatively, it was like about a 3-hour day. Of course, Murphy's very passionate or grateful about the fact that a defibrillator saved his life. And so he was only supposed to speak for 3 minutes, but he spoke for 10. And so it's his mission, and of course, my adopted mission as well, to make certain that everybody in the tennis world is well aware of knowing knowing how to engage or administer the defibrillator, and then of course have it charged. It's my understanding that like maybe about a month ago or a month and a half ago here in Atlanta, a gentleman fell on the court with a cardiac arrest situation. They ran out with the defibrillator to put it on him, and it hadn't been charged. So as a result, the man died. So had it been charged, hopefully he would still be alive today. And so I think that this is a long overdue bill that is going to be passed both in the Senate and the House. And Murphy was more than privileged to be selected to speak.
And quick backstory, Sean, I've spoken to Murphy on a couple of occasions. The first time we spoke, we had never spoken before. We're on the telephone. And 2.5 hours later, I had to explain to Murphy that I had to leave. We had never spoken on the phone before in our lives. I was the wise guy announcer for the Atlanta Thunder on the court. So he might have recognized my voice, but he didn't know who I was. 2.5 hours later, we finally hung up the phone and said, hey, we'll do this again. So I can see how Murphy can talk. He got it from somebody. But again, without going into too much detail, the incident, he was playing in an exhibition with Luke in Colorado and went into cardiac arrest.
Yeah, it was so amazing because he went to execute the serve. He put his arm up for the ball toss and then fell backwards, hit his skull, of course, on the hard court, cracked his skull in 5 different places. And the good news is that there was a defibrillator in the club. There were 3 emergency doctors in the audience at the time. They ran out, and then they put Murphy, of course, they put him, is it called inducing him into a coma?
Right,
he was in a coma for like 6 weeks which I think is so interesting. They froze each of his organs, and one at a time they would defreeze or whatever. or unfreeze, and so that they could get the blood circulating to that particular organ. And he's now, in fact, now he's working out all the time. Luke always says to him, "Why didn't you work out like this when we were playing?" But it's a little too late now. Um, but it's all good. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So not only with his We Connect company, but also now there was Luke and Murphy on several occasions annually would go to this Gooter Foundation and make an appearance at this Gooter Foundation, which is a heart related foundation. And now it's the Gooter Jensen Foundation.
Well,
So,
he'll do good work.
oh, yeah, I mean, very, very committed, very it just insistent upon making sure that people's lives are saved.
So we started, I would say, obviously the big thing that we worked together on was trying to introduce courts to Atlanta. And we've had Waleed on the phone. He's been on the podcast in the past, and you've got some backstory, more backstory. But what did you find fascinating about courts?
Oh, easy accessibility. The fact that, well, first of all, of course, the computer world, the app world is owning our lives, but the manageability from the front desk person, the tennis pros on their phone know who their lessons were, who their clinics were with, etc., and the times. All of the information that a player needed to know was on the Courts app. And it's just disappointing that Courts is no longer with us, and Waleed is in Dubai.
But Sean, be impressed. You know how technologically challenged I am, and that's my partner in crime. Patricia's equally tech, and Wally had the patience to get us through both of it. And look at it, she just did a fairly good description of all about courts. So we were listening all those times Waleed spoke.
Maybe if we had a defibrillator on all the courts would still be with us.
Yeah, we could have resuscitated it.
Yeah.
Or we could have shocked a few of the people that we had to deal with, which we usually leave names out of this, Patricia, so we can't speak poorly of those that we don't like. And if we do, we can edit it out. But still, we had some challenging experiences with some people, but
Well, challenges are always good, so that's a good thing. But let's talk about Georgia Tech.
I'm getting there.
Eubanks.
I'm getting there. Go. So what do you do for Georgia Tech now?
Okay, for Kenny Thorne, or Coach Thorne, who is the men's tennis coach. I mean, I've known Kenny since, I hate to say this, since he was probably 10 or 12. But when he took over as the role of the men's tennis coach at Georgia Tech, after a couple of years, he called, knowing I lived in Atlanta, he called me and asked would I be interested or think it was worthwhile to create or to schedule ball kids for the men's tennis program. But because of the school colors, he wanted to call them his golden retrievers, not his ball kids. And Georgia Tech is the only, even to this day, the only college tennis program that has ball kids on the court. So, and it's interesting, even at the NCAA championships, wherever they're scheduled, there are no ball kids. And so I think I've been directing that element or component of his program for at least 12 or 15 years. And the transition into the professionalism on their part into the Atlanta Open or the BB&T or whatever the title is at the time has always been amazing. And the officials, whenever they see me, always say, why can't you send your ball kids to DC? Or what? One time when Davis Cup was in Portland, I got a phone call from an official saying, how many ball kids can fly up? These kids for Davis Cup just don't know what to do. Send me your ball kids. I said, they've got school. So anyway, so that's been amazing. And they and then of course I also, when Atlanta or the Southern Tennis Association purchased the last week of July from Indianapolis, I got a phone call from Bill Oakes, and he said, "What department do you want? Because I want you involved with our whatever it was called at the time." And there was no hesitation. It was definitely, I wanted to be involved with the kids, because the tennis world has been so good to my entire family and taught them so many things, and they've derived so many benefits from being tennis players, that I just wanted to open those doors for for the young junior tennis players of Atlanta. And so many of them in the day are in phenomenal positions in the tennis world today. But we go on, and as long as we're talking about the Atlanta Open, on Monday, April 3rd, is that Tuesday maybe? Whenever April 3rd is, the VIP tickets are going on sale for the first time this year.
Under new leadership with Peter.
Oh, under great leader. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I thought the world of Eddie. But yes, Peter comes to the table. Obviously, he was the assistant tournament director, so he's very familiar with Atlanta and Atlantic Station. And then, of course, the community of Atlanta, the tennis community of Atlanta. So I had a phenomenal, very good meeting with him yesterday, going through some of my talking points in order to be fully prepared for the Open. And it's just going to be a great year.
And Sean, if you want to find Patricia during the Open, she has her office set up in the stands. She has one of the ball kids answers the phones, running the administrator. It's quite the sight to see how she literally holds office in the middle of the tournament. And you have to go, you know, you have to go. You have to go kiss the ring. So if you walk in, it's like, excuse me, I know you're here. I'm going to see Patricia. I'll come back and see you guys later. So, that's always one of my favorites, to keep everybody in line. So now I'm going over to see her first, and then I'll come back and talk to you guys. So that's where she'll be. She loves that seat.
Oh, love that in that corner. That's for sure. But it once again, I mean, we're so excited. Talking a little bit about Georgia Tech, I remember when my golden retrievers learned that Chris Eubanks was turning pro and not returning to Georgia Tech for the following year. They all said, "There's no way that if without Chris Eubanks, we're not going to come back to Georgia Tech." And of course they did. But now that Chris Eubanks did so well, he finally didn't win the last point in the quarters at Miami, and he's top 100 in the world now because of the results in his round of 64. And so the golden retrievers all have been sending me emails with every point that they followed Chris on TV or Tennis Channel, and it's just going to be a great Atlanta year this year when Chris Eubanks comes back to Atlanta. And it's time for him to win Atlanta.
Hey, that'd be fun. That'd be a big one too. That'd be fun to talk to him. Really Atlanta-based excitement, especially with Atlanta-based fans, just that built-in fan group of kids that love tennis, watching him break into the top 100. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, no. I mean, he has had, even though he hasn't been at Georgia Tech for 5 years now, it's amazing because every time he's home, he's at Georgia Tech, I'm saying, practicing or whatever. And he, to this day, 5 years later, he still has a phenomenal impact on the young junior tennis players of Atlanta.
And what are we going to be doing in late July? Who's coming? What are we doing at I always forget what it's called now. It used to be Windy Hill. What is?
Oh, don't even get me started. I thought we were also going to Windermere.
We are going there too, but the big one.
Oh, okay. Well, it depends upon who you talk to, how big it's going to be. But yes, Team Luke Hope for Minds is a foundation created by a former professional tennis player, Tim Siegel, who lost his beautiful 9-year-old athletic son, had a golf cart accident that the golf cart flipped and landed on Luke. And he was paralyzed from the waist down because of where the golf cart landed. But to add to that tragedy, on the way to the hospital, the EMT put the oxygen on wrong. So he was 30 minutes without oxygen to the brain. So as a result of many physical therapy appointments, Tim Siegel recognized that families that didn't have his educational athletic background, his wife is a nurse, they knew what to do with their son from a physical therapy perspective, but other families didn't. So he created a foundation and he called it for a legacy for his son, Team Luke Hope for Minds. And it's serving families in 46 states now. It's the only foundation that services families with brain injured children. So back to Windy Hill on Sunday, the day of the tennis exhibition. That last year was our first pro-am at Windy Hill, because Marcelo, the tennis director there, used to be the assistant coach to Tim Siegel. And so it was a very successful fundraising event. And we're going to schedule it again this year. In fact, it was so successful that some of the members signed up on Monday, the next day, to make sure that they had a spot in 2023 for the same pro-am. And I know that Phil Farmer, the coach of John Isner, who's a good friend, has already committed. And and Chris Eubanks, believe it or not, has also told his father that whatever I need from any foundation scheduling, that he would be there for us. So that's another good name that will be at the pro-am.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get involved last year, Sean. We had a blast. The Golden Retrievers were there being the ball kids. Tim was the coach at Texas Tech. He played at Arkansas. So a lot of his former players that he played with from Arkansas fly in for the weekend. One of his players was in the main draw of Atlanta last year, but another one of his players came in and helped out with the XO. Luke Jensen was there, and these guys ran around. I was lucky because they ran around so long. I just had to feed balls. So I was out there for 3 hours, but I was just feeding. They were running around like crazy people. I left hysterically because the adults came first, and pretty much we had 6 courts working. Most of the 6 courts where the adults were I think we were down to 3 after what was considered the warm-up, that they were like, okay, we're good. And so, it was fun. Tim is we're going to have Tim on the podcast as well here shortly. And amazing for somebody who speaks so positively, having endured such a tragedy, being a parent. It's unfathomable what a presentation he makes. And when he speaks, we're outside on a tennis court, and it was just absolutely silent. And we like to, because he was at Texas Tech, he has a relationship with a certain quarterback that has now won a couple of Super Bowls. And we have some good close-up pictures of Patrick Mahomes during the Super Bowl wearing the Team Luke bracelets during the Super Bowl. So, he's got Patrick Mahomes is involved. Drew Brees is very involved. And we're trying to get Drew here because Drew's also a very good tennis player. And he likes to
yes, he is.
He likes to remind Andy Roddick, I think the last time they played, he beat him, I think. Is that true? Or is that he just tossed? about that.
No. Of course, they were both 12 at the time.
Yeah.
but Drew never says that. Drew just says, "Remind Andy who who had the last win."
Hey, it's not when I beat Sven Saluma, who, made to the semifinals of the US Open, when we were 12. I don't tell anybody. He was still a foot taller than me. So it didn't matter even then. So
That's like me saying I got to win over Robbie Ginepri, right?
yeah, it's timing. Timing is everything.
He was 12. It doesn't count.
Yeah, it does. It was still Robbie Ginepri.
So that'll be what we got coming up in July. And that'll be a good time for a great cause. And hopefully we're going to get more established here in Atlanta because, obviously with Shepherd Spinal Center having such a great presence, it's a great fit to build on it. And actually one of my clients' sons had an issue in a car accident and we weren't sure how it was going to go. And I, gave them Tim's phone number, and thankfully it broke in the right way and the assistance was not needed. But, Tim was ready to go on a moment's notice, and they really do fantastic work getting people, to deal with and give them a direction, which I think so often when you get thrown into a situation like that and you don't know where to next turn, it certainly helps with what they're doing. So it's a wonderful cause, and we will keep you posted there. So what would be next on Patricia Jensen? I know you got the tournament coming. What else you got going? There's always something going on.
Well, we've got corporate entertainment at the U.S. Open, and Bobby Blair, who lives in Vegas right now. He and I represent the 3D painting of Rafa Nadal, and a certain percentage that's confidential goes to Rafa's foundation. And then also because of my involvement, a certain percentage of that painting. So at Indian Wells, let me finish that. My percentage, or a certain percentage because of my involvement, also goes to Team Luke Hope for Minds. At Indian Wells this year, there were 30 paintings sold. And so it's my understanding that Bobby is, well, first of all, we will have one at Windy Hill. Concourse Athletic Club we're in discussion with them to have one of the fundraisers there as well, and have a painting there. And then also we're hoping the tennis director at Windermere will have one up. But I haven't met with him yet. I keep trying to go to Windermere, but he's always busy.
Very busy. Very busy.
She's a name dropper.
It's who you know, Bobby.
Well, this is now, Sean, since you do have a young child, do not do this, because the reason she has to see me, she knows I'm a Disney fanatic and she knows my daughter. So I one time said out loud, Patricia, if you ever see Minnie Mouse in a skirt, pick it up, anything, because they're trying to transition her to make her a more today, where she's going to be wearing pants soon. Well, once a week I get a phone call. You're not going to believe what I found. And I'm like, Patricia, I'm going to have to move here, certainly. I mean, we do have a Disney room already, but the Disney room could be a Disney wing, thanks to Patricia and finding things. And she is going to lie and say that I keep a lot of the stuff, which, that I don't deliver everything that she is made for M, but, that's circumspect, but just, super generous, always thinking about you. So, now that you have Gio, just whatever becomes his favorite thing, just drop a little hint to Patricia and he'll never want, I promise.
What, his name is Gio? How great is that?
We call him G or Gio. His name is Giovanni.
Oh my God, is that not too Irish, is he?
He's not. Well, none of us are Irish. My wife's name is Giovanna.
Oh, wow.
She's Ecuadorian, so there's some Italian in the name, but she's from Ecuador. So when we spoke about names, Giovanni just made sense. It was just obvious.
Oh, how great is that? That is so good. Yes, yeah, perfect.
He'll be 6 months old in a couple of weeks, and we're loving every minute of it.
Oh, and just wait till he starts walking. That's fantastic.
We're gonna work on that two-handed backhand, and then I'm gonna need somebody to be able to teach him to serve on both sides. If you know anybody,
Oh, there's no question. There's no, well, let me tell you, my daughter, Rebecca, has a daughter, and then she named her Jensen. All right. And when she took her to her first USTA clinic, I'll never forget this, because Luke, with both of Rebecca's daughters, he's making certain that they develop both sides of the brain and serve on both sides. So Jensen was at the tennis clinic, and Rebecca dropped her off, and she was on her way home. And all of a sudden, she got a phone call from whoever the tennis coach or the tennis director was of the clinic. And he said, Rebecca, you better come back and get Jensen. And she said, Rebecca's immediate response, is she not following directions? Is she not doing what she's told to do? Yada, yada, yada. And he said, no, she's just not ready. And Rebecca said, what do you mean she's not ready? He said, well, sometimes she serves on the right side and sometimes she serves on the left side. So she's not ready. Rebecca said, she can throw it in as long as it gets in the box. That's all I care about. So yes, it's an easy thing to develop both sides of the brain to be able to serve both sides. But people just don't think about that, or they're just lucky to know that they're either right-handed or left-handed, and that's what they serve. That's where they serve.
Yeah, in the director's defense, I always laugh when I get the comment from the mother. We're not sure if he's lefty or righty. It usually translates to me as that they're equally spastic. So that there's nothing distinguishable because they're awful from both sides. So, oh boy, that's. I can understand that. I come for it. I understand where he's coming from.
Well, you notice I didn't drop a name. It was just the tennis director.
And Sean, don't get caught up with Jensen because she's a wonderful interior designer, but she charges through the roof. So just
no, that's Charlotte.
Charlotte. Oh, Charlotte's the one who overcharges me. Okay,
Charlotte overcharges you
because Miss Patricia does a lot of grandma transport, and we'd be on the phone. And
easy
Charlotte
on the G word. Easy on the G word.
Charlotte gets on the phone and starts telling me what I need to do with the house, but then she starts billing me, and it's like, whoa, hold on.
That's the theory. Is we all expect that friends and family rate, but there's another concept where your friends and family, we believe, should support each other. So we actually think friends and family should pay the full rate, if not more, because you want your friends and family to be successful. Where we always walk up and go, oh, Uncle Sean, you're a tennis coach. I can get free tennis lessons. I'm like, that is the exact opposite of how this should work.
That is so good, Sean.
Luke is quick to point out.
Sean, where do you coach?
Tennis for Children is mostly in Gwinnett County and North Fulton, Forsyth area. So we run 10 and under for clubs. When I think last you and I spoke, I was working mostly in the preschools. So now we're out in the kind of the northeast side of Atlanta, working with clubs and neighborhoods.
Oh, well, see. Okay, then are you familiar with, or have you been advised at all about the STEM program?
Yes.
At Atlanta Open?
Not that one specifically.
Okay, well, and I'm not sure how much of STEM is introduced, but UPS is one of our sponsors, and every morning from 9 until noon on all of the courts, children are invited, junior tennis players are invited. They call it the STEM program, but they're speakers. They bring in speakers. The tournament brings in speakers, and there are clinics and all good things to encourage more information and experiences with tennis. And then Chick-fil-A provides them all of the participants with lunch. And then the tournament gives all of the participating junior tennis players a ticket for the day session.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, so, and you don't, of course, you don't have to come every day, and you probably wouldn't be able to come every day, but you would get a day, and I would make certain that you were registered for that day. And then the coaches, of course, also come because we can't have 9 and 10-year-olds driving, so not yet. And so, okay, I'll make sure Bobby knows. Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely pay attention with that. So Bobby, can I ask her the question I've been waiting to ask?
You can answer the question, Patricia. Thank you. I knew we'd have no problem filling an hour, and we didn't even get into what the P really stands for, or how do we know when Luke's coming into town. We'll save those for another session.
No, Luke's in Charleston. It was great. How about this? So on Tuesday night, he arrives at 9 o'clock from Austin, because I always loved picking him up because it's a political conversation time from the airport to the house or the house to the airport. So and he watches everything, and I only watch ABC. So that's a constant conversation. But anyway, so he arrived at 9 o'clock on Tuesday night from Austin, Texas, because he was down there for ESPN. And then Wednesday morning, we were up and out of the house by 4:30 in the morning, because he had to be on a 6 o'clock flight to DC for Murphy's thing. And then he was back in Atlanta on Wednesday night it was like a 9 or 9:30 arrival time. And then, of course, Thursday morning, he left first flight, or excuse me, he drove to Charleston because he's coaching Coco Vanderway. So that's just a norm. Why did I tell you that? What was the question?
I said about Luke, about how do you know when Luke's coming into town? So what I'm saying, Sean, is the car was clean this week.
Yeah.
So you could actually sit in Patricia's car, because that's her other office, is the car.
Listen, I've been abused. Well, how about this? The reason some people thought it was my coaching schedule, or maybe my coaching demands or information, that we were so successful. But I always said that my gymnastic team was so successful because if any of them broke the rules or didn't score what they were supposed to be scoring, they had to either clean my car or had to clean my office. So nobody ever broke rules, and everybody was always there on time. So but my dashboard is my office, and my children complain all the time. But
All right,
I know
Sean,
where everything is.
ask the question.
Well,
Yes.
Patricia, we have a last question, and what I want to do is actually want to make more time for that question. So I'd like to ask a favor. Can we bring you back for a long version of this question? Because
Well, as long as you don't ask me for my credit card number.
No, not yet. Not yet. We always ask if you were king or queen of tennis, if there's anything you change or anything you do. And from what I can tell, you might as well be queen of tennis, because you are just doing all of the things that anyone would want to do. Anyone that could do, anyone that says, hey, you know what, I want to change something or add something, you seem to do that anyway. And we love hearing everything about it.
Sean, with or without permission.
Hey, you know what? That's why it's queen. You don't need permission, right? Queen of tennis, you might as well be. But what I'd like to do is schedule a time where we can just have a flat out, if you wanted to do even more, let's talk about that. But at this point, I want to say thanks, and we will schedule some time and definitely talk to you again. And because I know you and Bobby can basically just talk forever. So
absolutely.
I appreciate every second of your time, and we will talk about the Open. We'll talk about Team Luke, Chris Eubanks. That's exciting. And Georgia Tech and the Golden Retriever. There's just so much, and I'm sure there's more coming up. So I really appreciate it.
And thank you. I mean, seriously, thank you for that, because and nobody even discussed GoTennis and the good things that GoTennis is doing. So we need to put that as a priority when you call again.
I like it. Plugging us for us, because we didn't give it around to it. So I appreciate that. But
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
See you next week.